Canary Islands face new challenges with a large influx of migrants. Welcome to RICS Europe, Jorge Gonzalez Galarza, fellow and senior coordinator at the Center of Fundamental Rights in Madrid.
Thank you so much for having me, Rebecca. I appreciate being on your show.
So, could you first tell us what are the new challenges that are being faced in this situation?
Yes. Well, I surmise that a lot of folks in Sweden, across Europe, other countries will already be aware that the Canary Islands has become, over time, a sort of a new hotspot and a new microcosm of the migration crisis that I think our whole continent is undergoing. I think folks elsewhere in Europe would probably also remember Lampedusa or Lesbos and other outposts in the Mediterranean that were also heavily hit by large influxes of migrants mostly around the 2015 migrant crisis. Now, what we have going on in Europe right now is a sort of a pivoting away from, the Eastern Mediterranean through those hotspots. They used to be Greece and Italy, although those remain open as well. But now we're seeing really a heightening of the flows through the Canary Islands. This is a relatively recent route into Europe. And what's happening is that, even though during COVID, there were already sort of peaks in the arrivals of, mostly dinghies, right? These are, makeshift boats that depart mostly from Mauritanian ports. There were a few peaks during COVID, but now we're seeing this situation get totally out of control. I'll give you a few figures now in just a second. But the migrants that are arriving in the Canary Islands, which, by the way, is an archipelago in sort of southwestern Spain, it's closer to Africa. It's geographically part of Africa. The migrants are mostly from sub-Saharan Africa, from countries like Guinea, Mauritania, Mali, etc., and also a few from Morocco. And I'll just give you a few figures to kind of give your viewers an idea. 2024 is really, really breaking all the records. We have more than 26,000 arrivals in the months of the year this far. So in what has already lapsed of the year, we have more than 26,000, which is already 85% more than in the same period last year. So in terms of the number of boats, we have almost 400 boats in 2024 to date, even as in 2023, there were only 258 in the whole year. So we've already beaten the records of the last entire year in September this year.
And there's said to be a new deal between the regional government and the opposition on tackling the continued inflow of migrants. How will this deal affect handling this inflow, also when in regards to unaccompanied minors?
Yes, absolutely. And you're absolutely right to spotlight the issue of unaccompanied minors, because that's really been the political hot button issue in Spain, across the peninsula, and also in the Canary Islands, which, by the way, is being overrun, as has happened in other parts of Europe, which have faced countries that have faced similar inflows have also experienced, public services being overrun, security deteriorating, the difficulty for public authorities, local authorities, to process asylum claims, and also to give these minors and these migrants in general sort of a haven and a sort of a welcome to the best of their ability. So what I do want to remind your audience, though, Rebecca, if this is okay, I want to remind that the Canary Islands in some ways are facing what other parts of Europe are facing, which is mainly that both the regional government and the central government are hamstrung by international law, by EU law, international law, and by the protocols for asylum that are being legislated at these supranational levels. They obviously can't, there's obviously the rules around non-refoulement, so they can't return asylum seekers once someone has arrived into our territory and has filed an asylum claim. We have to somehow make sure that they're staying in sort of, and they're overseen by the public authorities while that claim is being adjudicated in court. But I think that's a problem that is being faced in other parts of Europe too, and really across the West. What is special about the Canary Islands that I want to emphasize is that, Spain has a very decentralized system where the regions take on, large amount of powers, and they administer health and education and the police and things like that, right? So what has happened is that, and I think your viewers will find this very interesting, the regional government in the Canary Islands is ruled, it's actually a coalition, but the major party that's ruling the Canary Islands is ruling in coalition with the socialists at the national level. They voted for the socialist government, which rules in Madrid. And yet they are souring on the socialist in Madrid because they feel like the socialist government in Madrid is not helping the Canary Islands enough. Because even though the region cannot either expel or even deter the arrivals of these migrants because of these rules that I mentioned, what the Canary Islands would like to see is to be able to spread the inflows so that other regions also take in some of the inflows. Now, that's really, really hard according to under Spanish law. And what the regional government is trying to do is it's trying to lobby for legislative changes that will allow for that spread, that will allow for the government to ship and sort of send migrants into other regions so that there's a sort of a sense of solidarity and equity between the regions. But short of that, in the absence of that legislative change, which will be very difficult because the socialists in Madrid are opposing it and they have a legislative parliamentary majority with their coalition partners, what they're actually doing is they're establishing protocols, and this is a sort of a left-wing left-wing party that is establishing pretty strict protocols so that migrants that are arriving, especially when they're minor, that that the local authorities can be more strict in terms of welcoming these migrants. Are you really minor, as you have declared in the form that we gave you and that you filled? There was actually a press conference yesterday where the president of the Canary Islands showed a form that was forged by some of these supposedly minor migrants, where a group of them had written down the same birth date. All of them had written the same birth date because I guess, at the time of sort of filling it out, they said, what date should we put so that we're considered minored? So we have really that problem. And I just wanted to emphasize before I close, Rebecca, that just today, there are two very key officials that are visiting the Canary Islands, just to give your viewers a sense of how crucial this issue has become for Spain. We have the King of Spain visiting the Canary Islands for 3 days, and we have the Vice President of the European Commission for the European Way of Life, Margarita Chinas. He's going to be in the Canary Islands. He's already pledged 14 million euros to help the Canaries. So you can imagine how the national government is probably not going to appreciate that even the European Commission is stepping in and trying to help the Canaries, which feels abandoned by Madrid.
In your point of view, what needs to be done to make a more sustainable migration situation?
Well, I think what I would sort of emphasize is that it's just not legitimate. Neither is it fair for the rest of Spain to expect the Canary Islands to take such a huge brunt of the inflow. Sure, we need to work towards changing migration laws so that Europe is able to regulate these flows and to make sure that asylum is not abused. We have thousands, like I said, 25,000 arrivals into the Canary Islands just this year, and many of them will be seeking asylum. We know that many of these claims will be fraudulent. We need a system, a European-wide system that will police the borders. First of all, we need Frontex beefing up the border patrols around the Canary Islands. The regional government feels left alone on that front as well. But short of, as I said prior, short of reforming the migration laws in Spain and in Europe, we can expect the Canary Islands to take it all in. It's just not fair. And this is, again, remember, this is a left-wing government. This is a regionalist party, which has some sort of left-wing tendencies, although it's, it kind of, it's a very sort of, it's a very malleable party because what they really stand for is the interest of the Canary Islands. So they will go into coalitions with the center right or the center left, depending. But they do have a center left inclination, and yet they see what the problem is for their citizens, and they're asking the rest of Spain to help in apportioning the migration that's coming into the country, so that it's not just one archipelago that is seeing all of its public services run over, all of its, its police, education, health being overrun. So that's what I think I would emphasize.
Thank you so much for answering my questions, Jorge Gonzalez Galarza, fellow and senior coordinator at the Center for Fundamental Rights in Madrid.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thanks very much for having me.
And thank you for watching RIX Europe.